Hi, my name's Dan, and this video is one in a series of videos that I'm doing about vectors, particularly exploring the use of vectors in Unreal, but also attempting to give a grounding in the concept of vectors and how they're used. It's impossible in a short series like this to cover everything that could be covered to do with vectors, but hopefully the aim is to give straightforward, clear explanations of what vectors are because they're really useful and because Unreal uses them. And so an understanding of vectors in Unreal is quite helpful. And in this particular one, I am talking about forces. So you may have come across, well, you've probably come across the word force. You may have actually come across it in physics uh, at school or in some other study. You may be a physicist, and I'm, completely patronising you, but in which case you probably don't need this video. Um, you've also probably heard of the Force from Star Wars. This is not that Force. This is more kind of mundane and general forces. And in kind of yeah, force, or the idea of a force is the idea of something being pushed or being pulled, and so there's some kind of this is going to cause an effect. It's going to make something move. So physics is some people would say physics is all about the study of real life and the way things happen. I would say that it's a little bit more subtle than that, and that physics gives us some mental tools. Most of these are mathematical tools with which to describe what happens in the world, and which then can be used to predict what happens in the future with things that you create or you make, or uh, with motion that's going on. And so, while in real life you can't point to something and say that's a force, it's however long or whatever, because it is just it is a concept that is there to help us do the maths and understand things. The concept of force is incredibly reliable in that it helps us do things like build bridges that don't fall down and deal with how to make tires that don't skid on roads and things like that. So there's all sorts of useful uh, things to do with forces. And the reason, of course, that forces are being dealt with in this series of videos is because the general way of expressing forces or describing forces is using vectors. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use some vectors to describe forces. Sorry about the long preamble there. So what I've got here is a third-person template with a few added objects. If you've been watching my other videos, you'll recognise some of these objects. The other thing that I've done is I've put a roof on here. That's because I'm going to have stuff bouncing around. Now, when I click play, that roof disappears because I have disabled or I have enabled hidden in game, but it's still there in terms of the physics. So some things will bounce off it. I just wanted to make use of the natural light and the thinning of light in here. The other thing that you'll see is that there's this box here which is floating in midair. And this is, I'll just stop playing. This is one of the objects that's in the scene that have turned into a static mesh actor. And if I can, um, yeah, I'm fumbling here to actually get it because you can see my mouse pointer, but I can't. For some strange reason, the new version of Unreal has hidden my mouse pointer. So let's just get really, really close, and then maybe I'll be able to select it. No, yeah, there we go. So, and then the static mesh component here, I have um, done a few things. Let's just get rid of that. And so I have made it. Where's the physics? I've simulated physics, but I've also disabled gravity and also made it so that it's movable in its mobility. So we'll see what happens when I play and I walk into it. And it's kind of as if gravity doesn't affect it, which is exactly what it is. But I can hit it and I can move it around. And in fact, when I'm doing that, I'm applying some form of force to it, which has been created through the physics simulation. Okay. What we're actually going to do is we're going to do this in a more controlled way. So one of the reasons for turning this into a blueprint is so that I can actually get into the blueprint and do some stuff. Now I've done some preparation work in here, just because I didn't want to spend forever doing stuff in with the script. So let's try and describe what I've got. So in the variables, I've got 6 Boolean variables for up, down, left, right, forwards, and backwards. And what those represent are switching on and off a particular force, and the force is going to move along the cardinal axis. And then I've got, let's ignore that force vector for now. I've got 6 forces here: up force, down force, left force, right force, forwards force, and backwards force. And up force, if we move over here, you can see is 0, 0, 10,000. So Z is upwards. 10,000 is a reasonable amount of upwards. Forces, and in fact, quite a lot of the things to do with physics in Unreal, the numbers that you use are often, they seem big. And the reason why they seem big compared to ones that we might have seen in maths problems or physics problems is that normally we're used to working in meters, or certainly we are in Europe, and uh, Unreal works in centimeters. So everything is out by a factor of 100 at least, and sometimes these effects multiply depending on where you are. So I've got an up force which is 10,000 upwards, a down force which is 10,000 downwards, a left force, a right force, and a backwards force and a forwards. Have I got those the right word? Forwards force, backwards force. I have forgotten to put the minus sign on that, so I'll just do that now. Okay, right. So that's the forces. Ignore that variable and that variable for now. We'll come on to them later. The other thing that I've got going here is I have enabled input. So I'm using, here we are, event begin play, enable input and play controller. And I'm just using the simple input where you just directly pull the information off of the key being pressed. So got pressed and released. And so Y, well, this is a kind of set out like WASD, but actually 3 keys to the right of that. So we're using Y and I think I might have got it wrong. This would be Y and H. Up and no, getting this wrong, aren't I? I've got Y and R. Yes, I'm just got my hand in the wrong place looking at. Y and R is up and down. F and H, so that's below, as left and right. And then T as forwards and G as backwards. And it's exactly like WASD. We're using Q and E for up and down as you do in the editor. And when you press the key, it sets the boolean to true. When you release the key, it sets the boolean to false. So those 6 controls are mapped to those 6 booleans. And the point of this is, rather than doing something just instantly and instantaneously as a result of the key press, is that as we keep the key pressed, we want the force to continue to have an effect. I've then got an event tick, and what I want to do is to take those forces and apply them to the bot. So we're doing that in event tick. Again, that's just for future use. Doing a sequence, so I'm just doing branch tests of those 6 booleans. And what I'm actually going to do then is, I don't know why I'm zooming out. I want reference to the static mesh component because that's the thing that's actually moving. And I want to do add force. And I'm just going to do one and then show you, and then I'll plug in all the rest. So I'm going to add the force, which is the up force, the up key. There we go. Here and play. So my up key is T, and if you watch the box as I press T, is it Y? Yes, it's Y. I'm still off to the side. Now you can see it's bouncing off that invisible roof. But I haven't got any other forces in there, so it just pushes it upwards. And it's a fairly light push, despite it being 10,000. It kind of feels like you're pushing a balloon around. Um, so let me just go back in and connect all the rest of these. I'm just going to put 5 more of these in. And look, this is why I wanted to prepare some stuff, because there is so much of this to do. Chances of me making a mistake in this are reasonably high, given I'm trying to think about what I'm saying as well at the same time as doing the stuff, getting the forces in, downwards. Yeah, I've got that already as a mistake. I want left, don't I? Left force. Okay. So this node is just adds a force to a component, fairly obviously. Left force, right force, um, forward force, and backwards force. I didn't have to have these pre-prepared as variables. I could just, let's just disconnect one of those. Could just put the values in here in the add force node. You'll see why this is useful in a few minutes. And the thing we haven't done is hook them all up to the static mesh component. So let's just do that. Actually, if I'm talking about the force, it should be down. Boom. There we are. Thankfully, you're safe from my humming. So I hope I have plugged that all in correctly, and we've got all those 6 forces working now. Get my hand in the right place this time. See. Yes, I have got it in the right place. No, forwards. That's it. Backwards. Back. Left. Right. Down. Up. Okay. So I now have forces in all 4 directions, and it feels a bit like, first of all, as I say, pushing a balloon around because it's quite light. But also, if you saw the last video I did in the series about velocity and acceleration, it feels like acceleration, because if you implement a force like this, I'm pushing and then I let go, and it keeps moving. And that's because force creates acceleration. There's a fairly brainy guy called Newton who declared some uh, formulae, some equations of motion, as they're called, and one of them is F equals ma, which is force equals mass times acceleration. And so you apply the force, and depending on how heavy the thing is that you apply the force to, will tell you how much it accelerates. Right, there are a few things that I want to show you with this then. So the first is, well, I guess there's a small problem that you can't see me pressing the keys with my hand. If I press the up and down, so that's, again, get the right keys. That's up and that's down. Get a bit closer. But if I press them both at the same time, we have no effect. Similarly, for forwards and backwards, and for left and right. So what's happening is those 2 forces are cancelling each other out. Now, what happens if let's get closer again, if I press the backwards and left? Let's do that at the same time. Yeah, and the right keys as well would be useful. Backwards and left. The force acts as a diagonal. And if we press any combination of 2 that aren't opposite to each other, we get diagonal forces. And if we press 3 the 3 different 3 that are not all not opposite to each other, then you get a set of forces that has a diagonal, as it were. And what's happening here is that when you apply forces, if you apply more than one force, actually, in terms of simulation, you could say that this is applying. I can't get up there because of the roof. That's cool. The forces add together to create a resultant force. And actually, what you can do is you can do that in with the vectors. You could add them together and then apply that force once. That's exactly what we're going to do now, is we're going to go back into our blueprint and we're going to change it so that we're going to create a force that is compiled of all the different forces we want to apply to it, and then just apply that one force. And hopefully you'll see that basically not just basically, it actually performs exactly the same. So let's go back into our blueprint, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all this messy stuff here. And I'm going to use this force. In fact, let's change the name of it and make it total force. That makes a bit more sense. So I'm setting that to 0 on event tick, because what I want to do is to make sure that there's no value in there. So I'm then going to take whichever force components are being used and add them to that. So for each one, I'm going to do a set total force. I'm just going to copy that and paste it so that we've got 6 copies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm going to add whatever force it is that I'm getting to that and get total force, and add. And for this one, this is the up force. And this is why I've created them as variables, so that it makes it easier to do this. Everything's a little bit on the cramped side, so I'm just going to ease things out a bit, get a bit of space, and then replicate this idea. So, hook that up right. As I was saying, replicate this by things like, yeah, okay, I could have copied all 3 of these, and that might have been better. It's total force going into there. Let's get that a bit out of the way, so a bit more room. And a bit more space. I'm going to make a bit more space again. So about all this messing around with the blueprint. It's what tends to happen when you do stuff that's got lots of different aspects in it in Unreal. So do some more hooking up. That goes there, that goes there, that goes there. This is where mistakes can easily happen, is when you've got multiple stuff to do and you forget the details of how they're different, or you forget to hook absolutely everything up. Excuse me. And then you get something that's not working as it should. The extra things that I want in here, just going to again create a little bit of space so that I can bring in down force, left force, right force, forwards force, backwards force, and hook them up. Right, so by the time we got to the end of that, this is just coming out of the sequence, obviously. By the time we get to the end of all those, that total force should be the combined forces of all the forces we actually want to use at this point in time. And all we need to do then is to use it. So we're going to do our apply force, sorry, add force is what it's called. And I have to have an extra pin out of my sequence, thankfully, and we're just going to use that total force. There we go. Now, this should then behave exactly the same. Let's see if we can do that right. Let's start by doing a little bit of up. Actually, that's down. A little bit of up. And forwards, backwards, left, right, and then whole 3 of them together. And it's adding them up and giving us these forces. So, obviously, you can't tell. Hidden it, that's nice. You can't tell that it does feel exactly the same because I'm the person who's pressing the keys. So you're going to have to trust me on that. Okay. But hopefully the idea is that I've demonstrated that this thing does work, where you add together the forces that you want and then apply it. So one thing that you might want to do with some things is with a physics object you can disable gravity. Another way of dealing with that is to actually apply a force upwards that's equal and opposite to gravity. And the gravitational force in Unreal is, I believe, 98,000. And this is related to the fact that the acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second, which is something I can reel off the top of my head because I'm that kind of geek. So what else do I want to show you? Well, let's stop and go back in to that blueprint. Is one of these ways of doing it better than the other? No, I wouldn't say so. The only reason that I've done it as this cumulative force is to show to you uh, this thing that you can add these forces on. The other thing that I want to show you is impulses. So I'm not talking about, a desire to have some chocolate. And I wish I hadn't said that now because I now feel like some chocolate. But sometimes instead of using a force, which is like a constant push, you want to simulate the idea of a hit or a slap or something that's kind of bouncing off something, or the explosion from a gun, the bullet from a gun or something like that. And that's called an impulse in physics. And what that is actually quite a strong force, but for a very short period of time. And it's been kind of idealized as being um, over an infinitesimal, I think, time for an impulse. So the way that we're going to do this is, so there is another um, node which is called add impulse. What we don't want to do is deal with it in the same way that we've done here, which is that we're switching it on, switching it off, because an impulse is something that happens, and then if you did it on event tick, you would basically be, every time you go from the tick, you'd be doing that hit again. So you keep doing constant hits, and you kind of disappear off into the distance. So instead, what we're going to do is going to disconnect that. Can't be bothered to delete everything here. And I've actually got some stuff over here to the left, which I have set up. So I've actually got the same controls, Y, R, etc. down here. And I'm using again, these variables that have got the forces in. And I'm going to set this variable impulse from them. I'm going to use that as an impulse. So when you press the key, it just gives you the impulse once. And then you let go, it doesn't do anything. You press it again, it'll give you it again. So you can repeatedly apply the impulse, or you can apply impulses in different directions. So I'm using the vectors again that I use for the forces because they give me the direction that I want. I'm going to hook these up. But for impulses, these vectors are a little on the small side. So I'm going to then apply a multiplier for that impulse. Which is here, I'm just multiplying it by 10 and then resetting it to impulse. And then I'm going to add impulse. So that's going to put that on the static mesh component. Okay. And again, if I've done anything wrong, then this should work. So now I'm standing up in the box, I'm looking at the up and the down. So that's the down. Bounce, there we go. It kind of gives it a push. But as I hold the key, it doesn't give another one. So if I do several in a row, it works like that. So it's kind of looking like something hitting it and bouncing around. So multiplying the vector by 10 gives you quite a significant impulse there, which is quite nice, and it flies around quite nicely. And that's a bit of fun. And yes, I don't know why I'm going up there because I know I can't go up there. So I'm just in search of my little red box. So that's been an exploration of forces and impulses in Unreal, and that's it from me for now.